Hi. Oh, it's Amanda here from Patchwork and Papercraft, and I've decided to do this little series on quilt making from the beginning, from the absolute basics, from the fundamentals, because when I started I really wanted somebody to tell me all of this, and there was nobody about that was going to. Now bear in mind that I'm in England, so the sizes of fabrics here tend to be a little bit different to the US. No idea why, it's just one of those things. Okay, so today we're going to look at what do you actually need? What are the essentials? What do you need? And importantly, how much is it all going to cost to make your first quilt? Okay, so first of all, let's look at the types of material that you might need. The basic is cotton. The better the quality of cotton, the better. Materials made by weaving fabric, weaving threads in and out. And the closer the threads are together, the better the quality of the finished product. So the better the quality of cotton, the less likely it frays, comes apart, and the easier it is to work with. You can use anything you like. You don't have to use cotton. You can use polycotton, which is polyester cotton. It's much thinner than ordinary cotton. It frays, comes apart at the edges. But if all you're making is, say, a wall hanging, it's great. But if you're wanting to make a bed quilt, a baby quilt, anything like that, you don't want polycotton. You want proper cotton. Other fabrics. You can use anything, absolutely anything, but they are more difficult to work with. So for an absolute beginner, I would say cotton every time, 100% cotton. But if you do want to use, say, denim, or I don't know what else is there, lace or chiffon or anything, you can actually use it. It's just a lot more difficult to use. Okay, so that's the types of material. Now, what sorts of material are there? Well, you can buy material by the metre. It comes on great long rolls, and the rolls are either 45 inches long or wide, or sometimes you can get a 60-inch wide in England. I'm aware that they are different in America sometimes, okay? And that alters the next bit. Now, you can buy it by the metre. It tends to be the cheapest way to do it, and it can be anything from £8 a metre. You can get them a little bit cheaper if you're buying it new, but you know, you can expect to pay about that. Or you can get something called a pre-cut. Now, pre-cuts come in all different sizes, and I've got a few to show you. So we'll start off with this one. Hopefully you can see it okay. Now, this is a charm pack, and it measures 5 inches in each direction. Okay. Now, this one's from Moda. They are quite expensive, and it's all different fabrics, but they all coordinate. So you don't have to worry about it. It takes the guesswork out of it. You don't have to pick and choose and decide for yourself, you know, what fabrics go with what. This is the ones we're going to be using on our first quilt, that size. You can also get slightly smaller. These are 4x4s. Timu 4x4s. That's also not particularly good quality, however. And then you can get what's called a mini charm pack. Now, a mini charm pack, if we go back to this charm pack, if you cut it in half this way and that way, so you've got little pieces, 2.5 inch square. That's a mini charm pack. So that's how they make them. They take one of these, which contains typically 40 pieces, and they just go chop, chop, and they've made 4 mini charm packs. Or you can get what's called a jelly roll. Now, a jelly roll, sorry for the noise, looks a bit like this. Now these are 2.5 inches wide. Again, I mean, this is all different solid colours, so they don't coordinate that well, but if you're doing a rainbow quilt, it'd be great. They usually do, you know, the patterned ones coordinate again. If you're doing anything with a little bit of edging or a bit of separation in it, as you'll see what I mean later, then they're great. And they all sorts of patterns use these. These are actually only half length. These are only 22 inches long. Let's, you know, but the proper jelly rolls are 44 inches long by 2.5 wide. What else is there? Well, you can also get ones that are 1.5 inch wide by 44 long, and they're called honey buns. I've never used one. Don't really see the point in them, but a lot of people do use them if you want a very thin border or a thin separator. Okay, and then we move on from there. The next size up, if you like, is called a layer cake. You know, a layer cake is this size, and these are 10 inch wide. These ones I've actually made myself from by the yardage, but you can buy them in packs. Again, you get 42 in a pack normally for a layer cake, 10 inch squares. And again, if you go to Temu, you can get 7 inch or 8 inch squares. And then up from that is what we call a fat quarter. And they come in bundles or separates. Now this is a little bundle I bought. Gives you some idea. There we go. Don't know that you can actually see this, but there we go. This is a fat quarter. And it's actually, this one's called Crafty by, can't actually read that, Crafty Cotton, it says, English print. Anyway, technically a fat quarter, you make it by, you take your full length of your roll of fabric and you cut it in half, because the full length is 45 inches or 44 usable. Cut it in half and you've got 22.5, and then you come along the other way a 1/4 of a metre. All right, so that gives you, anyway, what you end up with is a piece that measures 18 inches by 22 or thereabouts. You can also get a fat 1/8, which is half of that, so that's your 22 by 9 inches. And there are all sorts of other things that you can buy. You can get junior layer cakes, which only have half the number of pieces in them. You can get honeycomb, which is hexagon shapes in a pack. All sorts, but those are the most common. All right, your layer cake, your charm squares, and your jelly roll. They're the most often bought. Okay, so let's move on. What's next? Oh yes, what else are you going to need? Well, you've got your material. Once you've got your material and you've made the front of your quilt, you now need to put a back on it. The entirety of the back of your quilt needs covering. So that's 1 or 2 big pieces of fabric. You normally end up with a seam down the middle if it's a big quilt, sometimes 2 seams. But that's material bought from the yard, by the yard or by the metre. And you need something called batting to go in it. Now batting, which is more commonly known as wadding in England, is this stuff. It's fluffy stuff that goes in between the front of the quilt and the back of the quilt. Okay, this is what gives your quilt your warmth. They call it loft because it's the height of it is called the loft. This one's a thin one. It's a 2 inch. 2 ounce. It's a thin one. Or you can get a thicker one, which is this one, I think. This one's a 4 ounce. Yeah, which is double the thickness. Yeah, 4 ounce. And as you can see, £4.50 a metre. But it's not all that wide, this particular cut. Less than a metre wide. Pardon me. The other way to buy wadding, this is the way they tend to buy it in America, is in packs like this. Now this is called a Hobbs heirloom cotton batting, and it comes ready cut for you into the various sizes that you might want. A little bit more expensive, but there we go. As well as that, you'll need another bit of material to go around the very edge of your quilt as an edging, because otherwise you'd see inside it, wouldn't you? And it'll all be rough and yucky. So you have to seal the edges, and that's called your binding. Okay, so that's all the materials and stuff. Well, what else do you need to make this quilt? It's already a long list, isn't it? But you're going to need a few things that are fairly obvious, really. Pins. Quilting pins are longer than sewing pins. See if I can show you the difference. Have I got a sewing pin here? Yes. There we go. I'll put them together. So this is a sewing pin. It finishes here. And this is the quilting pin, which is considerably longer. Yeah. You can also get extra longs, which are even longer again. The other difference, pull them back out again. Ordinary sewing pins tend to have a round bit on the end, whereas quilting pins are flat, or tend to be flat. Makes a lot of difference when you're using them. But lots of people don't actually like using pins, because when you're using them in the machine, you end up sticking them into yourself. And if that's you, then you might prefer these things. So these are little clips. So you clip the edges of your pieces together. In all fairness, both of them are useful. Another thing you will definitely need is one of these. Now this is called a quick unpick in England, seam ripper in America, and it takes your seams apart, because when you start, I don't care how good you are or how good you think you are going to make seams that when you take a look at them, you're going to think, ew, that's rubbish, ain't straight. And that's why you need your seam ripper, quick unpick, to quickly unpick all the stitches. What else? Well, cotton. If you're making it by hand, you want hand cotton or sewing cotton. If you're making it on the machine, of course, you want machine sewing cotton. Cotton thread is probably the best one to go for, but different machines do prefer different types of thread, so you might have to experiment a little bit. What else? An iron. Full-size iron with an ironing board, at the minimum. But then you can progress. You get yourself a little one. A mini steam iron. These are absolutely amazing. But if you get a mini iron, you don't want the full-size ironing board. You want one of these. This is a wool mat. It's nice and thick. So, what, half an inch thick? This is a small one, but it's quite big enough for most of the smaller pieces, and I put a bit of felt on the top because it makes it easier to use. Just pop that over there out of the way. And the only other thing you actually desperately need is a good pair of scissors, and you want them so that the bottom of the blade is flat with the handle. Usually, see if I've got different pair, because of course I do paper crafting as well. So these are paper crafting scissors, and as you can see, the blade is not in line with the handle. The handle sticks out, so I put them side by side. Yeah, you can see the difference. You need the flat ones. It makes your cutting a lot more accurate. And again, you can go up from that. You can decide, right, I've had enough of using scissors. and you buy yourself one of these. And this is a rotary cutter, which you pull it along your fabric and it cuts it. But you don't have to have one of those. Scissors are fine. If you do have one of those, then you're going to need a cutting mat. If I got a little cutting mat to show you. Yes. I've got a big one of these on my main table, but this is a cutting mat, green thing. It's got all your lines on it that you can help you to cut in straight lines. And it does something called self-healing, which means that when you cut it with your rotary cutter, it mends itself. Okay, the other one thing that is fantastic if you can afford it is one of these, a walking foot. And they're funny looking things. And if you're doing a big quilt, they're pretty much essential. But for smaller quilts, you don't really need them. Nice to have though. The only other thing you need really is a sewing machine. What sort? Doesn't matter. What type? Doesn't matter. As long as it works. Mine, if I can just turn the camera around a bit and show you. This is mine. It's a U-tin. Although that's not by the by, has loads and loads of different stitches, but you don't need them. The only ones you ever use are the straight stitch and the zigzag. That's it. You can use decorative stitches, of course you can, but the ones you really need, well, the straight stitch is essential and the zigzag useful. But on mine, I've added this, which is an extended table. It's been a game changer because it holds your fabric slightly more. Yeah, there's more space to hold your fabric. So if you can get one, brilliant. Okay, well that brings us on to, yeah, okay, well this is all very well. We've got all these various things, but this fabric you were talking about, how much does it cost? It ain't cheap, let me tell you. Here we go. I've made this chart, and feel free to, you know, stop the video and have a good look at it. I don't expect it's particularly straight, but there we go. And I've put down on there how many of various things you need from a cot quilt up to a king size, because of course how much does it cost is a bit subjective. It depends on a lot of things. Let's have a look at the cot quilt, for example. Here we go, cot quilt. If you're doing it all in fat quarters, 4 to 6 fat quarters, they're typically about £3 each. So that's about 18 quid for your fat quarters, and you'd have a bit left over. Or you can use jelly rolls to make it. You'd only need one, but it's about 40 quid for a jelly roll. Now these prices are, I found them on the net, so they're up to date as of today, which is January the 22nd. But these are not full price. These are not you can often get a discount on things, you know, but this is the full price that I found. So jelly roll, 40 quid, but you only need one. Again, remember, we are doing a cot quilt. Or you can use a layer cake, which will cost you about £45, but you won't use all of it. You'll only use maybe 3/4 of it. Or you can do it with charm packs, and you'd need 3 or 4 charm packs to make a cot quilt, probably. And so that would be about 60 quid, because they're around about 15 each, although again you can get them cheaper if you shop around. But no matter which one of those you use, or whether you use meterage instead and cut it up yourself, you're going to need your backing. You're going to need a metre of backing, which is about another £8, because £8 a metre. You'll need another ½ metre for the binding. You'll need the wadding, which is about £12 to £15. So at the cheapest, let me see, would be the fat quarters plus the binding, the backing and the wadding. So that would be, let me see, 8, 15, 33, 37, 39, £45 to make your cock quilt. Yeah, exactly. If we have a look at again at the king size, this is the biggest one. Oh, you want to know how big the cot quilt is? See if I can find my sizes. Cot quilt sizes. Come on, where's your sizes? I've got them written down somewhere. Ah, there they are. Quilt sizes. Cot quilt around about 47 by 55 inches. Again, different sizes in America. Next one down, actually, while I think about it, is this one. It's called a lap quilt in England, or a 3-yard quilt in America. If you look online, you find all sorts of patterns, don't you? People saying, oh, this is my 3-yard quilt. Join me to make this 3-yard quilt. It's called a 3-yard quilt because the backing takes 3 yards, which is about 2 3/4 meters, by the way. But that is why it's called a 3-yard quilt. Not because you only need 3 yards of material and you can make the whole thing, because you can't. But because you need 3 yards of material to make the backing. All right. You'd also need 10 fat quarters or 3 jelly rolls, or why have I put one? It would take more than 1 layer cake, probably take 2. Or 1.5, 1 and a bit anyway. 4 charm packs, yeah. All right, down to the king size. Now, king size will take about 30 or so fat quarters, or 12 jelly rolls. You see what the price is? Yes. Or 5 layer cakes, or 20 charm packs. The backing could be as much as 10 meters. Plus 2 meters for your binding, and of course your batting or wadding. So you're talking about a large amount of money. These are not cheap. Let me pop you back up here. They're not cheap to make, but they are fun. They're engrossing. Once you've made one, you're going to want to make loads. But do you start with making a quilt? Well, to be honest, no, not normally. The first thing you normally make is something small, like a table runner or a wall hanging, something like that. So anyway, on our next video, oh no, I won't. There's one more thing I've got to say first. When you've made your front of your quilt, so you've got a lovely front of quilt, you need to put your backing on it and your wadding inside it, and then you need to what's called quilt it. Join them together. Now at that point you can take it to a long arm quilter. Now there's a problem there. They will charge usually by the square meter, well, sorry, by the square inch or by the square centimetre. It ain't cheap. It's time consuming. It's not an easy job to do. And it takes a massive machinery, which, let's face it, most people haven't got room for in their houses, so that's why you have to take it away to do it. But that could add another £300 or £400 to the cost of a king-size quilt, easily. Or you can do it at home. You can join the two together with straight lines or with wiggly lines, that sort of thing. It's called free arm if you do it with wiggly lines. But you have to have plenty of room around your sewing machine to do it, because you're going to get in a right muddle otherwise. And that's the other reason. We tend to start with a smaller object, a cot quilt at the biggest, okay? So, on the next video, I'm going to start off showing you how to put the basic blocks together, pieces together, to make a basic block. And then we're going to use those blocks to make something, and it'll probably be a cot quilt, okay? But that will be next time. and we will make this quilt together, step by step by step. All right, and it might take me a couple of videos to do it. So join me next time when we start to put our quilt together. Thank you ever so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.